Chapter 2. City Beneath the Sand. The gates slowly rise to allow the city guard out. Led by Amastus and Enkidu, the guardsmen are supplemented by hundreds of other men gathered to protect their city. Untested in battle and fearing for their lives, the men shake with fear. "Hold!" orders Amastus. "Enkidu, did your angel give you any details about these creatures?" "He warned me that a great evil was approaching, but no more. His counsel is vague to say the least at times. Once you informed me of the threat, he was more forthcoming. They are called the Sicarii and come from a world known as Averno. They are foul demons with a terrible thirst for violence, and we cannot underestimate their power." "Will he be lending us any other aid from the Yazata?" Enkidu slowly shakes his head, keeping his eyes fixed on the approaching Sicarii soldiers. His right hand rests upon the hilt of his sword, ready at a moment's notice to draw. More elegant and powerful than any other weapon in the world, the sword that is called Tivon pulsates within its scabbard. Unlike the other swords and daggers of mankind, Enkidu's blade is constructed of a kind of diamond, a gift left to him by his great-grandfather. The Sicarii howl loudly with excitement and pump their weapons in the air and stomp their feet. Dozens of horsemen break rank and flee back towards the city walls for protection. "Do not hate them," Enkidu says calmly. "Most of them are merchants, builders, and hunters, and have no true experience in battle. You cannot blame them for their fear. It is natural." Large, four-footed reptilian animals appear in the Sicarii's next advancing line. More heavily armored Sicarii warriors sit atop the Upas, which act as their horses. "I too am afraid, but we must stand firm. We must protect our city." "When did you become a soldier?" Amastus asks with a smile. "Last I checked, you did nothing but hide in your temple and pray." Raising his right hand, he causes the riders to draw their bows and notch arrows. "Archers, ready!" To commune with the Yazata, one must pray diligently. Enkidu returns the smile and thumbs Tivon. Praying, however, is not all one does inside of a temple. Clad in black armor with numerous spikes jetting from it in all angles, Rivius takes up the front position of his forces and begins to shout commands to his troops in a guttural tongue, unheard of by the men. "Diosa Agnestra!" Rivius bellows. Many of the soldiers begin to weave intricate signs with their hands, closing their eyes and visualizing symbolic glyphs. Enkidu feels a chill and begins to walk his horse backwards in caution. "Order the line to fall back." One of those words was a Yazatan phrase. Before the captain can respond, fire rains down among the horsemen. Panic consumes the army, causing both man and beast alike to burn. "Stay in formation!" Amastus screams. "Use all of our water skins to douse the flames!" He turns to Enkidu, flushed with concern. "Why do these demons know the angelic tongue?" Enkidu has no answer. He debates whether the Yazata commune with all beings, not just humans. Surely Master Hoyles would have told me were that so. Yet he knew that these creatures existed and did not tell me what they were until they had already appeared. There is much that he knows that he is not sharing with me. "Archers, release!" On the captain's command, thousands of arrows sail across the gap between the two armies. Sicarii soldiers squeal in pain as shafts pierce through arms, thighs, and necks. Monstrous Upas rise up, thrashing as arrows plunge into their hides. The Sicarii leader shouts more commands, causing Enkidu unease. "Do what you can to break their line. I will engage their leader. When I have killed him, press the attack while their forces are in disarray." "You mean to take him on alone?" Amastus frowns. "Be ready to assail them as soon as he falls. They may be able to recover should another take up the lead." Enkidu dismounts, drawing Tivon. His hair hangs down to his shoulders in tangled waves. Once it was a dark shade of blonde. Now dried blood and sweat mixed with baked-on dirt leaves it brown. His light armor is unable to contain his large muscles and imposing body. Steam-like waves rise from his form, a physical manifestation of his inner strength, energy, or aura. Enkidu charges the Sicarii line, cutting through scores of soldiers with ease. Tivon does not slow to any difference between flesh or male. Limbs drop, and blood sprays into the air in thick mists. The Sicarii's attack on the man slows, more and more, as soldiers part to allow him to pass in fear. The leader thrusts his sword through a fleeing soldier's torso and scowls. "You cannot blame them for running. They are not like us," Enkidu says, using the Yazatan tongue. "What makes you think you know anything about me, monkey?" growls Rivius. "I would hope that for a being to be as strong as you, one would be able to sense energy as well. I have felt you coming for some time now." "You sense my power, and yet you do not join the other humans in flight? Foolish creature. I said that I sensed you. I am well prepared." "Your preparations have been in vain," Rivius howls. His aura erupts like flames around his body in a swirling violent cyclone. Waves of energy rush past the human, who does not even flinch. "I told you that I am well prepared," Enkidu says, raising one of his hands. The Sakari laughs at the confidence of the man, having taken many lives over his 350 years of existence. "Having no fear is not the same as having strength," Rivius says. Enkidu smiles as a glowing blue orb of light appears above his held-up hand. This is a form of discipline that few humans have learned, and even fewer can master into a style of fighting. By focusing one's inner light and drawing it forth to the surface, one proficient with the procedure can then shape that power and use it as a weapon. It is referred to as manifestation. "True, but possessing both is even better," Enkidu replies with a grin, his orb of focused energy pulsating with sheer power. "A human that can manipulate his own energy into a weapon is impressive, but not unheard of. I have killed others who boasted similar skill." "You are very arrogant, demon. You underestimate your enemies." Rivius pushes one of his soldiers towards Enkidu and uses the stunned Sakari for cover. As expected, Enkidu must first cut through the shield soldier first, and Rivius attacks with a two-handed sword slash, meant to cleave the human in half. Enkidu whips his back foot around, kicking up a cloud of dust, and rips his sword free of the Sakari soldier, just in time to cross blades with the opposition leader. Rivius grimaces, feeling the power of their impact reverberating through his arms. Switching his grip into his one hand, Enkidu delivers a devastating uppercut that crunches bone to dust. Coughing up blood, Rivius stumbles backwards and tries to regain his composure. Tears sting in his eyes, and he realizes with horror that Enkidu's blow was the single most painful strike he has ever suffered. "Give up now and return whence you came," Enkidu says. "There need not be further bloodshed." Rivius growls, furious at how the human thinks it can talk down to him after landing a single hit. "I do not know how you knew of our coming, but no amount of preparation is enough. After I cut you down, our forces will sweep over your land and leave not a single building erect." "You will not get past me," Enkidu says confidently. "This shall be your final duel, should you choose not to heed my warning. Then unleash your assault and allow me to kill you and move on to more important things. Lord Marduk needs this city cleared out, since it is the largest city closest to our portal. I must make way for the rest of his great army. When this village falls, none of their surrounding ones will be able to put much of a defense up before we can sweep over them," Rivius thinks to himself. "As you wish," Enkidu shouts, hurling the orb into the Sakari's chest. Rivius swings his sword to cut the energy in half, but the orb changes direction unexpectedly and slams into his chest. He howls in pain as his body glows white-hot, slowly breaking apart into tiny pieces that dissolve away. "What is this?" Rivius screams as he is burned alive. "It is called Brahmastra, the Retributive. Soon the energy will destroy you from the inside out, judging your crimes." "How could a human have learned such a powerful attack?" Rivius whispers as his body is nearly fully dissolved. "Learned? No, I created it," Enkidu says as the Sakari vanishes in a final yelp of agony. Screams fill the air, burnt bodies. Others, just mangled, lie strewn across the dirt as refuse. As he stands over the ashes of the fallen Sakari, a telepathic voice cuts into the man's head, talking to him from another world that is called Halavan. "Enkidu, the Earth's aura is still sour. Something darker remains. Master Hoyles, I killed their strongest. Those remaining are already fleeing back. Enkidu replies to the heavenly voice. The Yazata is a member of the elite class called the Hashmalim, which are tasked with overseeing the development and protection of lower races. That creature was but part of a scouting party. The true power that I prepared you for still remains to show itself. Master, there is no way such a power could exist. What you sensed was many times stronger than that which I have already slain. Prepare for the worst. You are a strong warrior. With faith you shall succeed. I must. If I fail, there will be no one else left here to stop them. Amastus approaches, blood smeared on his face and dripping from his blade. The remainder of their host has fled back into the wastelands. I have sent 300 men in pursuit. He looks down at the ashes of Rivius. I should have never doubted you, my friend. We must ready the city. More on the way. Rockland, Indiana, Wednesday, February 12, 1992. Elian Schaefer holds an ancient golden amulet in his hands. The object is a priceless family heirloom going back to at least his 8th great-grandfather in the 18th century. Beyond that, no one knows whether it was passed on to him by his father or if it was gained from someplace else. The heirloom has never brought great luck to the family, as 4 of its Schaefer predecessors died as criminals. Elian's paternal great-grandmother, Wilhelmina, used to call it blood of the scoundrel. His paternal great-grandfather, Marcus, had led a double life, pretending to be at work at a sawmill by day and coming home to his loving family at night. What no one knew until he was shot by police in June of 1958 was that his income was generated through human trafficking. He would collect runaways and sell them to a third party, which would then make them available to rich businessmen, celebrities, and political figures as sexual servants. A single symbol is carved onto the amulet, yet no one has been able to decipher what it means. The symbol is unrecognizable in any language known. Family history insists that the symbol translates to do not, or forbidden, but no one can reliably state where the belief originated. Another name is tied to the amulet, Yamura. Yet again, no one knows where this name came from, as it is found nowhere on the object. Several Schaefers were institutionalized for madness and screams of voices in their heads. Voices beckoned them to kill and urged them to seek out a city buried in the sand. Despite all of this, no one has been able to part with the amulet in the family. Twice wives have tried to sell it, and both times they and the buyers were killed to retrieve the heirloom. Like his ancestors, Elian does not know the origin of the amulet, or why his family carries with it such a violent history. When his second wife left him and he spent every waking moment in drunken depression, the voices came to him. Slowly and unthreateningly at first, but over the months they have transformed into something much more disturbing. Search out the city buried in the sand. Only there will you find the answers. The disembodied voice sends the chill down Elian's back. No matter how many times he's heard it, it never becomes any less frightening. The deep, inhuman tone, the powerful resonance, the suggestive messages, these things combine to shake Elian's very psyche daily. When the voices first appeared, he assumed he was just tired. He had been working himself very hard, and the stress of his second wife leaving him with his daughters would have put pressure on any man. Yet the voice persisted. It would come at any time of the day, and it was exceedingly clear that no one could hear it save for Elian himself. Some kinds of brain tumors will make you start hearing voices, Elian thought, going to the doctor for a full CAT scan and checkup. The results he received would have made any man his age and weight cheerful. Elian, however, became troubled. What other answers could explain this voice if it were not stress or a medical condition? As if on cue, the voice began to clarify its wishes. Instead of cryptic messages, it began to give Elian information that he couldn't possibly know, even subconsciously. Find the ruins of Meshaluas. Find the book of the Black Earth. The voice persists. Elian dabs his sweat-covered forehead with a cool washcloth and tries to take deep breaths. The sweating continues as fears this voice increases every day. If it isn't all in his head, then where does this voice come from? And to whom or what does it belong? In severe fright of the answers to those questions, Elian begins to research the names and places given by the voice as a starting point. To his frustration, none of them seem to exist. Am I just making all of this up? Have I developed some kind of psychosis? Elian wonders as he slams shut another dust-covered book of ancient civilizations. Nothing he can find seems to go further back than ancient Sumer, around the year 4000 BC. After that, civilizations become fairly well documented, and the chance for a lost city such as this Meshach Lewis to not be mentioned by any of them is slim. A break comes for him in the form of radiocarbon dating. Through this scientific method, archaeologists dated newly uncovered ruins of an ancient city in a region that is part of present-day Turkey in the Middle East, approximately to the year 7000 BC. Elian is instantly intrigued after hearing of this news, with the city previously unknown to the modern world being discovered that predates our concepts of cities by several thousand years. The chances of there being other forgotten ancient cities rises. Elian's personal life, or lack thereof, becomes swallowed by the endeavors put forward by the urging voice. He continues to go to work at his dojo, training the students in the ways of martial arts. After work each day, however, Elian immediately delves himself into archaeological research in hope of finding any leads to this phantom city. Investigation continues on the ruins in Turkey after they dubbed the city Göbekli Tepe. It is found that during a time when man was supposed to be primitive and incapable of higher forms of social interaction, a city with hieroglyphic-like writing and pottery existed. The further archaeologists dig into the earth, the more of this ancient city they uncover. Vast stone pillars depicting animals and human-animal chimeras circle the streets and buildings. By expressing his interest repeatedly in the area, several archaeologists form a correspondence with Elian and keep him up to date on their findings. Professor Aidan Cohan of the University of Istanbul sends him an email one day with 2 photo attachments. To eschaefer68 at AOL.com from A. Cohan at ULIL. Elian, the newest building we have uncovered here in the ruins has some photographs that I believe you will find very interesting. As you can see, the first is another chimera. They were obsessed with combining humans and animal imagery. This chimera, if you cannot tell, is of some kind of fox or wolf. It's slightly larger than the previous drawings we have categorized as foxes, so we are classifying it as a wolf. The second photo is from the inside of the same building on the opposite wall. It appears to be 2 winged beings, though they are worn down and barely visible, holding up a black sphere. This is the photo that I thought would grab your attention the most. It could very well be a reference to that book of the Black Earth you have repeatedly asked about. I cannot quite be sure, though. The depiction of a wolf could easily draw a parallel to the orb, and that can mean that it's some kind of form of the moon. We still have not uncovered any evidence of formal writing, only these drawings. Without writing, it will be difficult for us to completely understand the meanings behind any of them. Elian spends nearly an hour studying the photo attachments. He tries to visualize them from different angles and see them how they originally existed thousands of years ago. It could be a connection, but it's still not enough. His next break does not come for another 3 months, with an invitation to participate in the World Martial Arts Championships. The tournament is held annually and is hosted in a different world locale each time. This year's tournament is being hosted in the city of Haifa, Israel. Despite having won a decade ago, Elian hasn't participated for the last 2 years. News, however, out of a small village in Israel makes the possibility of the trip twofold. A sheep herder from the small village of Tel Abasha tripped over some stones sticking out of the ground in a field about 2 miles from the village. Archaeologists were called in from Jerusalem when no one was able to dig up to the bottom of the stones. It was soon discovered that the stones belonged to the roofs of several buildings and that the desert had swallowed an entire city. Search out the city buried in the sand. Only there will you find the answers. Elian forms a reply to the board of directors for the tournament committee and accepts their invitation. That spring, Elian is flown to Israel and meets up with Professor Kohan, who has also found interest in this discovery and taken a break from the excavation of Göbekli Tepe. A small and slender man greets Elian at the airport in Jerusalem. His appearance is like that of a scarecrow, and his branch-like arms fork into abnormally long and thin fingers. A long white beard frames the elder man's vastly angular face. "Professor Kohan?" Elian asks, extending his right hand in greeting. "Elian, it is good to meet you in person. It is always nice to meet someone who is so interested in this field that isn't already strangled and drowning in university politics. I must be honest, it is only a fairly recent interest. A year ago, I couldn't tell you Sumer from winter." Professor Kohan laughs loudly. His entire body shakes, and it appears as if he were about to shatter into a million fragile pieces. The two of them collect Elian's single suitcase at baggage claim, passing dozens of armed men in military fatigues. "Do not worry, the soldiers are even-tempered," the professor says, seeing Elian shifting uncomfortably as they walk past the soldiers. "My father always told me stories how the Jewish soldiers were like boogeymen that hunted down young Arabs like sport animals. But my time as an academic has greatly pulled me away from religious and socio-economic superstitions. Boiled down, we are all only two types: those who desire to learn, and those who can only be guided by others." As they pass another group of soldiers, Elian tries to nod and smile in the direction. The soldiers remain cool and professional, slightly nodding their heads in return, but never lowering their guns. Elian and Professor Kohan exit the airport and climb into a dark green jeep with the top removed. A lean Israeli soldier is driving. His face is worn and has several faint scars, now faded and white. Elian assumes each scar has a story associated with it that ends in someone's death. Beside the driver is another soldier who is much younger. His eyes are still vibrant, and it is obvious that he has not seen nearly the amount of death and destruction that his elder compatriot has. On his lap rests an M4A1 rifle. He grips the gun tightly as their two passengers climb into the back. Both soldiers are members of the Magav, an army unit of the Israeli Defense Forces tasked with border security. Tel Abasha is on the border of a Palestinian hot zone. An armed escort is required for all visitors, the professor explains. Elian nods but does not reply. His mind has drifted and become far too focused on the possibility of these ruins discovered at Tel Abasha being the long-lost city of Meshach Luas. The chances are that he will find some answers regarding the strange beckoning voice, and it's calling for him to find the city buried in the sand. After 3 hours, they arrive at the small village of Tel Abasha. Elian is stunned to see that there are places where people are so far removed from technology in the modern world that it is like traveling 2,000 years back into the past. Dressed in beige-colored robes, the people of Tel Abasha are chiefly goat farmers and cultivators of small cash crops, such as fig, wheat, and barley. Professor Kohan speaks to a few men in Hebrew and is soon pointed to the western edge of the village where the farmer accidentally uncovered the first stone. They arrive at the dig site very quickly, as it only takes a few minutes to walk from one end of the village to the other. The excavation area is about half a kilometer wide and composed of a series of stepped holes where numerous 20-somethings are occupied digging out the site in sections. A dozen graduate students from Hebrew University of Jerusalem, under the guidance of dig supervisor Daniel Elazar, laboriously dig out the site piece by piece. A dark brown-skinned man in a gray suit approaches them and smiles. His smile is pushed down towards the ground by a thick silver mustache, which clashes with his jet-black hair. Professor Elazar has been in charge of the excavation from the beginning, being called by the farmer that discovered the ruins personally. With 3 books published under his belt on the topics of ancient civilizations of the Middle East, he is one of the world's foremost authorities on pre-Egyptian history. A dig team led by him made national headlines only 4 years earlier after discovering a fully functional musical instrument near the remains of a Neolithic human who was carbon dated to circa 20,000 BC. "A fabulous dig you have, Professor Elazar," Professor Cohan compliments. "You have no idea, my friend. Come, let me show you around." Professor Elazar leads them down several staggered step plateaus into a stretch of ground that appears to be part of a large stone staircase. On either side of the stones are massive pillars decorated with pictures of animals, both known and unknown. Familiar animals such as vultures, wolves, leopards, camels, and crocodiles occupy the space, along with several strikingly strange creatures. A large monkey-like animal sits near the base of one pillar. Its face is framed by an angular snout and triangular ears, very unlike any primates seen in the fossil record or living today. Another creature is quadruped and possesses 3 horns on its head, likening it to the dinosaur known as Triceratops. Elian briefly ponders why and how the builders of this ancient city were familiar with a Triceratops-like animal. Had there been stories passed down from those who had actually witnessed such beasts? "Is this a dinosaur?" Elian asks a young female grad student as she strives to polish the dust off the base of the pillar. She works to determine whether it terminates or continues deeper into the ground. The girl, 23 years old, looks up at him as he poses his question. Her long black hair is pulled through the loop of a blue baseball cap. Her eyes are large brown marbles and her skin is light for the region, yet still hinted with olive tones. "We believe so, yes," Lior Nadav replies with a smile. Professor Elazar pushes himself into the conversation. Elian instantly surmises that the man is an egocentrist and glory hound. His appreciation for the history is lower than his striving to achieve further fame and notoriety. "My best guess would be that the residents of this city were familiar with archaeology enough to have found the remains of ancient beasts and successfully recreated what they looked like in real life," Professor Elazar interjects. "So you don't think any of them actually saw a Triceratops?" Elian asks. "Do I actually think humans interacted with an animal that went extinct 65 million years ago? You have a very American sense of humor, Mr. Schaefer." Professor Elazar laughs loudly, wiping the sweat off his forehead with a silk handkerchief from his breast pocket. Elian grinds his teeth together in response to the professor's pompous reply. To him, it was a perfectly legitimate question. Lior stands up and whispers into Elian's ear. "Do not worry. He did not come up with that theory on his own. I proposed it to him 2 days ago. He isn't actually brilliant. He just has good students under him," she finishes with a smile. Elian wants to laugh at the knowledge that Elazar isn't as smart as he thinks he is, but instead becomes agitated that the man takes credit for the hard work and intelligence of his grad students. "What of this primate?" Professor Cohan asks, pointing to the bottom of the pillar containing the depiction of the angular-faced simian. "What of this primate?" Professor Cohan asks, pointing to the bottom of the pillar containing the depiction of the angular-faced simian. "Our current consensus is that it is an ancestor to the Cercopithidae family of apes, which contains the macaw genus. I have decided to name it Macaw Elazar." Professor Elazar smiles, dabbing the sweat again with his handkerchief. "It wasn't unknown to them," Elian says, interrupting in agitation at the professor's smug attitude. Professor Elazar glances at him, but shrugs the comment off and continues talking. "No, I suppose not. It may have been a species whose numbers were never very great, such as the great panda today. They may have found one of the few existing preserved fossil remains of such a creature. Or it was alive during their time and has gone extinct since," Elian argues. "Yes, that too is a possibility. Even in ancient times, man has led to the eradication of many remarkable creatures. They say that even fantastical beasts, such as the mammoths, were only driven to extinction 10 to 12,000 years ago." Elian leans over to Lior and whispers a comment to her as soon as Professor Elazar begins to walk further into the dig site. "Let me guess. One of the other grad students is is an anthropology major with a good understanding of primates, he asks. Lior laughs and replies with a thick Hebrew accent. Yes, Elisha is working on his doctorate in anthropology to work at the Oberle Primate Research Institute in South Africa, she says, pointing to a young man who works diligently above them on a plateau, trying to dig out the top of a pillar containing part of what looks like a badger. Elian follows the professors as they descend further into the excavation, reaching a stone building. The building and its roof appear to be cut from a single tightened block of sandstone, and it has no visible windows or doors. "What is this?" Professor Cohan asks, pointing to the building. "We do not yet know. This is our current blockade. The street path ends at this building. We do not know whether it truly ends, or if the building comprises a stopping point that all must pass through before the road picks back up on the other side," Professor Elazar explains. "Like a toll booth?" Elian asks. Professor Elazar shrugs. "We won't know until we can get inside. Currently, we're attacking it from the other side in hopes of finding an entrance and the resuming of the road further down." Professor Cohan places his hand on Elian's back. "Let us check in at our hotel and rest. You said that you were participating in the martial arts tournament this weekend, no?" he asks. Elian nods, having completely forgotten about his invitation to the World Martial Arts Championships. "Professor Elazar will keep us posted of updates, I am sure. I'm confident that he will find entry into the building, and then we can all discover the rich stores of knowledge that this site will unlock," Professor Cohan continues. Professor Elazar smiles at the vote of confidence from his academia peer. "I shall wait for the two of you before entering once we uncover that entrance," he promises with a seemingly genuine smile. Elian Schaefer awakens to his 6 a.m. alarm and hurriedly moves into the bathroom to shave and shower. He dresses in a loose-fitting black uniform, bearing a black dragon with red flames surrounding it, which represents his dojo. Grabbing his duffel bag, he exits to the lobby, where a cab is already waiting to take him down to where the tournament committee has erected a mobile stadium with seating for 4,000 spectators. Most years, the World Martial Arts Championships is held in the country's largest stadium, as the crowd it draws is from all over the world, and is quite overwhelming. This year, however, tensions in Jerusalem between the Israelis and Palestinians are heated, and the tournament has to be held in a safer location in the city of Haifa. The tournament committee curses their decisions to hold the championships in a country that is constantly engaged in some kind of militaristic upheaval. The drawing of lots is scheduled for 8 a.m., so Elian hopes the cab driver can beat the traffic in time in such a densely populated city with so few available roads. The tournament committee director, Yassat Nazrim of France, begins the drawing of lots at 8 a.m. sharp, and Elian is relieved to have made it with almost 30 minutes to spare. 128 participants from around the world, including the top 16 from the previous year's tournament, have received invitations to compete. Of those 128, 2 preliminary rounds will cut them down to 32, followed by the first round, a quarterfinal round, a semifinal round, and then the last 2 remaining will duke it out in the grand finals. Those eliminated in the quarterfinals will participate in a second tournament to determine third place. A grand prize of $100,000 is issued each year, with the runner-up receiving $50,000 and third place receiving $10,000. Elian receives his first preliminary opponent, a tall and wiry man from Eastern Europe named Bron Medev. Elian quickly eliminates Medev from the tournament, sweeping his legs and instantly rushing him with a double-fisted strike to the chest. Elian sits down and rests, waiting 20 minutes for the other bouts to finish, and his next match to be handed out. In the second preliminary round, Elian faces off against Tran Nguyen, a fellow martial arts school owner and instructor from South Korea. This bout is much more evenly matched as the two spend several minutes trading punches and kicks, while both parties either blocking or evading. Elian also manages to win this match and advance to the first official round of the tournament. In the first round, Elian defeats Hyun Gim of China, but on the second day of the tournament, he falls to Jun Sato of Japan. The match was close, but the 17-year-old Sato was able to outlast Elian with his youthfulness and larger reserves of energy. It's a shame that I cannot showcase my true talents in competitions such as these. Elian returns to his hotel after the second day's events and sleeps deeply, trying to get as much rest as he can. Elian and Professor Cohan return to the Telebasha dig site bright and early on Sunday morning. Elian had planned to watch the final rounds of the tournament, but the email from Professor Elazar was much more important. To E. Schaefer 68 at AOL.com from D. Elazar at huj.il. We have found an entrance into the building, and are awaiting your return so that we may uncover the forgotten city's secrets. Do not delay, or I will be forced to continue our expedition without you. Progress marches forward at the lead of the scientist, not the casual enthusiast. Elian is slightly disappointed that he did not place high enough to receive any prizes in the tournament, yet being in the top 16 still entitles him to another automatic invitation next year. 2 years ago he used his prize money to open up his own martial arts dojo. Winning a top 3 finish this year would have eased the burden of the many outstanding loans he currently owes. Discovering something at the Telebasha dig site that might lend new insight into the phantom voice exhausting him outweighs any monetary struggles in his mind. It is good that you did not delay. I am far too anxious to see what awaits us, Professor Elazar tells them as soon as they exit the jeep. The same 2 soldiers from Thursday climb out of the vehicle and begin to wander around, forced to guard the 2 foreigners within the Palestinian hot zone. Professor Elazar leads the way into the building with a lantern-like flashlight, closely followed by Elian, Professor Cohan, and the grad students Lior, Gabby, and Alicia. As soon as they descend the step dig plateaus down onto the newly uncovered walkway on the other side of the building, they are placed directly into the jaws of a massive serpent creature carved into the entryway. It appears that we will symbolically be entering into this creature's mouth. Professor Elazar laughs as he enters into the darkness. His flashlight leaves a round yellowish glow, and the others quickly follow as to not lose the light. Elian and Professor Cohan thumb on their own personal flashlights, and the halls suddenly brighten and reveal vast murals carved and painted all along the walls. Elian is assaulted by voices and a cold wind all around him. His body screams for him to go no further, but self-preservation be damned against curiosity. All around them on the walls are carvings and paintings of a massive black serpent, devouring men and women, and some men dressed in ornate outfits, with the skull of a crocodile for a headdress, preside over these slaughters with arms raised to the sky. Priests, Lior says, glancing at the murals. This is a temple, a site of worship for this reptilian god. Blessed be the name of Nylar Throtep, servant of the god of the abyss, king of dragons and father of Tiamat. The phantom voices sing into Elian's head, unlike the singular voice of a male entity that he is accustomed to, as much as he can be accustomed to a disembodied voice telling him to do things. The chorus of voices he now hears within the temple is comprised of many, both male and female. They continue walking until they reach a large open room. Deep holes rest in the center of the floor, and to the side is a massive stone block of rectangular shape. The stone and the floor around it are covered in black stains and ancient grime. Professor Elazar and Lior examine the stone and grime closely, whispering back and forth. Sacrificial altar? Professor Elazar asks. It would appear so. The person or animals being sacrificed would be placed on the stone slab, and then their blood would run along the floor into these holes. I'm guessing they are drains, Lior replies. A lot of blood would have to be released here in order to require special drainage. Lior nods, not wanting to picture what horrors the priest inflicted in this room. There are carvings on the floor as well, Alicia says in observation, pointing to several lines framing the floor drains. He hops onto the sacrificial slab to get a taller view and notices that the lines transform the floor drain into what appears to be the open mouth of the serpent once more. The blood symbolically fed the serpent god. See, the blood flowed into its mouth here, he adds, hopping down and pointing to the floor drain. There's a draft from below. I think it leads down into an underground cavern. Lior says, holding her hand close to the mouth. Elian trembles as his senses are assaulted, and he finds the room spinning and his vision hazy. A vision of a dark-skinned priestess standing before the altar comes over him. The young woman is dressed in a brilliantly colored ceremonial robe and headdress adorned with feathers. The robe is open and the priestess wears nothing underneath. A man is held over the altar by two young male servants of the priestess, who raises a dagger over her head. Red eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, peer out from the pit, awaiting the sacrifice. Massive black coils twist around in the darkness, consuming Elian with fear. "I don't think it was symbolic," Elian whispers as he finally clears his head of the vision. The others look at him in confusion. "Something large was kept down below. They fed it the sacrifices," he continues. "Now what would make you leap to such a grandiose conclusion?" Professor Elazar growls in irritation. Elian points at the drains, showing them deep notches running along the underside. "That isn't wear. Those are fang marks. A large fanged animal snapped upwards, catching its teeth along the underside," he adds. Lior and Alicia both look carefully, but Professor Elazar ignores him. "Those marks could be anything from erosion to intentional carvings to enhance the perception of a living serpent god. The ancients were known to hoax religious events, such as filling statues with blood or milk, and then plugging the holes with wax. When the statue is heated, the wax melts, and a miracle occurs. When the statue either bleeds or lactates," the professor argues. "Maybe we should go down there and check it out," Alicia suggests. "And risk collapsing the entire building into the cavern should they exist? No, we fully catalog this site. Then at a later date we consider our options for investigating down below," Professor Elazar says, quelling any further discussion of the topic. Elian's mind continues to be filled by the sounds of praise for Nyarlathotep and the pained screams of the sacrificial victims. The black coils of the serpent god feel like they are constricting his chest, and he finds it difficult to catch his breath. "The air down there is thousands of years old. If you aren't used to these environments, it can be overwhelming," Lior tells Elian, seeing that he is struggling. "Below. Go down below." The voice of the one Elian is normally accustomed to beckons him to search the caverns beneath the excavation site. "The book lies below. Retrieve the book." Elian, feeling as if he is being driven mad. The voices become louder and more forceful the longer he tries to ignore it. When he can take no more, he quickly runs to Alicia's pack and grabs a pickaxe. Before anyone can understand exactly what is going on, Elian has already begun to attack the drain. He slams the pickaxe again and again onto the stone surrounding the drain, widening it slowly. "What are you doing, you maniac? Somebody stop him!" Professor Elazar screams. Alicia and Gabby run towards Elian, but as he turns to face them, they back off in fright. His chest heaves exaggeratedly. His eyes stare forwards like a man possessed, looking straight past them as he grips the pickaxe tightly. "Get the soldiers, damn you!" Professor Elazar screams, throwing his hands towards the exit. Alicia is the first to respond, dashing towards the corridor and vanishing. "Elian, what madness has consumed you?" Professor Kohan pleads. Elian ignores them, again focusing his attention on widening the hole. When he is satisfied that he can fit, he ties off a long length of rope around the sacrificial altar and rappels down into the hole and into the darkness. Armed only with a flashlight and the pickaxe, Elian has no idea what awaits him in the former dwelling of the serpent Nyarlathotep. About 30 feet down, Elian finally reaches the soft ground. The floor beneath him is wet, and the theory that this is an underground cave system is proven accurate. In some places, the ground is not as damp, and he can see ancient bones fused into the rocks. Most of the remains appear to be human in origin. As he explores the passage, the finding of human remains increases to staggering amounts. "Remains! Lots of human remains!" Elian shouts back up to the others. The two Israeli soldiers sprint into the open sacrifice chamber, followed closely by Alicia. "It's okay. I believe we have it under control now," Professor Elazar says, holding his hand towards the soldiers. His voice cracks. The thought of being credited with the discovery of a cavern full of prehistoric human remains removes any animosity toward the American in an instant. "Hold on! I'm coming to join you!" Professor Elazar rappels down, followed next by Lior, then Gabby, Professor Kohan, and Turai Herman, the younger of the two soldiers. They find Elian further down in the drier, higher elevated passage of the cavern. He is crouched in front of a complete human skeleton that is fused partially into the wall over time. It clutches something large and black in its hands. Elian pulls at the object, which snaps the skeleton's wrists off, like dry kindling. In his hands he holds a grime-covered book. The binding is some kind of leather-like compound, and the pages are thicker than modern paper. It is eerily well preserved. "What is that?" Lior asks, seeing Elian trying to wipe off millennia of grime. "The Book of the Black Earth," Elian whispers. You were right," Professor Kohan says, stunned and nearly speechless. "You knew it existed all along." "Book of the Black Earth," Professor Elazar repeats. "I've never heard of such a thing." Lior approaches Elian, trying to gain a better view of the artifact. Elian pulls away, his eyes glistening. The voices scream louder than ever. They shout in pain. Some shout in laughter or triumph, while others still whisper black thoughts into his ears from within. "Kill her. Kill them all. They will take the book away from you. Kill them, and let their blood flow like precious milk, so that Nylar Throtep may suckle." Elian shakes the thoughts away for a moment, handing the book over to the young woman. As soon as her fingers touch the ancient tome, Lior's eyes light up. "Remarkable! We were all taught that written language did not originate until 4,000 or 5,000 BCE. This will rewrite all of history," she whispers. "You are the brilliant one. The others will take all of the credit, leaving you again with nothing. Kill them. Bury their bodies down here, and then say it was all an accident. Then your face will be on the cover of every scientific journal in the world." A deep male voice whispers to her. "You can spare the American. Or not. It does not really matter. He has served his purpose. He can be replaced if necessary." Lior shakes, violent images flashing through her mind of Professor Elazar, Alicia, Gabby, and the Israeli soldiers hanging above the sacrificial altar. They are naked and possess deep cuts along their abdomen. Blood is everywhere. She pushes the book back into Elian's hands. "This place is filled with evil," she whispers. Professor Elazar pushes past her, snatching the book from Elian and holding his flashlight to it. "Do not be a superstitious fool. There are no ghosts or demons in this place." He smiles, taking in the glory of their find. "Do not let them take this from you. This find will be your legacy," the voice whispers to him. "You will become the man who rewrote the history of the world. This will be the new centerpiece of the Prehistoric Israel exhibit. It will be the talk of the intellectual community for decades. The Book of Ancient Telebasha and the Temple of the Serpent. What a grand exhibit it shall be." "Meth Shaluas," Elian whispers. Professor Elazar glances over at him, momentarily pausing his celebration. "This city is called Meth Shaluas. The book is called the Book of the Black Earth, and the serpent is Nylar Throtep." Elian continues, glancing at the man that holds his treasure. Fine, whatever. You can collaborate with the exhibit technicians once everything begins the planning stage," Professor Elazar says, brushing the comments off. "Kill him. He will take the book away and ruin everything," the voice urges Elian. Professor Kohan walks over, and Elazar hands him the book, still grinning widely. "Have you ever before seen such a thing?" Professor Elazar asks, still thinking of all the ways he can set up the exhibit. "I have not. This is truly remarkable," Professor Kohan says quietly. The voices do not come to him, as there is no darkness in his heart to exploit. He hears nothing but the echoed breathing of his companions. "Can you read it?" Elian asks Professor Kohan, as he opens the dusk and grime-covered tome. The elder man merely shakes his head as he turns each page, his eyes never moving away from the book. Each page is written in 3 vertical columns, composed of 25 to 50 strange symbols each. Most of these symbols resemble spiraling patterns with sharp points and curves similar to the tribal tattoo craze indulged by Marines and fraternity brothers. "It is no form of language I have ever seen," Professor Cohan finally whispers. "I am not a linguist, but through the years I have become familiar with many of the ancient writing styles." Elian's heart sinks. To come so far and finally have something this close that may have been what he was searching for, only to turn out to be unreadable. This has a devastating effect. It has some similarities to Sumerian cuneiform and early Celtic rune writing, but those cultures are separated by a gulf of nearly 5,000 years, Professor Cohan observes. And look at the precision of the penman, very similar to the professional artistry of Chinese calligraphy. "A hoax, then?" Elian asks, disparaged. "Perhaps, though as well sealed off as this tomb was, and how much digging had to occur to reveal the city, not to mention the entire population of Telebasha having no knowledge of its existence. I'd say very unlikely. Maybe the people of Telebasha are the hoaxers. I'm sure goat farming isn't as lucrative as the publicity and tourism generated by a discovery such as this," Elian adds. Professor Cohan seems to ponder this for a moment before replying to Elian. "We will have the book and the bone fragments carbon dated. And the dark stains on the slab and floor? We will run organic trace tests and see if we cannot determine whether it was human or animal sacrifice taking place here." Elian nods. He has a slightly renewed hope as the possibility exists to confirm these ruins as a pre-Sumerian civilization and place it into the realm of a lost city such as the one called Meth-Shaluas that the disembodied voice has referred to as being needed sought out. Professor Elazar bags the book up in protective covering and places it in a wooden crate once they are back up into the open sacrificial chamber room. Alicia and Gabby fill the crate with styrofoam packing peanuts to prevent it from banging around during shipment. In a separate box, Professor Elazar instructs Gabby to place several of the bone fragments recovered from down in the caverns. He also kneels by the sacrificial altar and scrapes some of the black material into a glass vial with a pocket knife. "Get a new sample, and this time use one of the sterilized scalpels. You're introducing your own organic material as a variable by using your personal knife," Professor Elazar shouts, scolding the grad student. "They are stealing it away from you. It will be placed in storage and forgotten." The voice echoes into Elian's thoughts. At this point, he is unclear whether he has truly heard the voice, or if it is his own opinion projecting through. "I would still like some time with the book once your tests are completed," Elian interrupts. Professor Cohan is about to reply when Professor Elazar cuts him off. "The dig and its findings are property of the Israeli government and Hebrew University. We cannot release the book to a civilian researcher. What if it is damaged? This book contains potentially limitless stores of this region's prehistory. It is a one-of-a-kind object and irreplaceable." Elian's anger rises uncontrollably. Violent images flash through his mind quickly. He sees himself smashing the professor over the head with a stone, and then pounding away at his fallen figure until his skull is all but liquefied. "I have a colleague at the University of Chicago. It is only a few hours from you, no?" Professor Cohan asks Elian. Elian snaps out of his violent daydream and he slowly nods, the anger having dissipated very little. "We can have the book sent on loan temporarily to him. You can view it at university, and that way all the bureaucratic red tape will be satisfied." Professor Cohan turns to Professor Elazar looking for a confirmation of this alternate suggestion. "I suppose that will be satisfactory to all parties," he nods. Elian cannot shake the images flashing through his mind completely. The latest of these images has Professor Elazar strung up above the sacrificial altar while Elian, dressed in a ceremonial priest's robe and headdress, cuts open his abdomen slowly with a long curved blade. Scores of his blood spills out from the spreading wound and splashes onto the stone altar before flowing over the side and onto the floor like a crimson waterfall. Blessed be the name of Narlar Throtep, servant of the god of the abyss, king of dragons, and father of Tiamat. The voices echo from the altar, sounding as if trapped in time within the stone until its excavation.